Coming to us directly from Las Vegas, Nevada, is Brian White. Brian, how have you been enjoying your time in Vegas so far?
It is cold, Randy. It is so cold. I'm not used to it, and neither are the locals. It's pretty crazy. I do have to stop you, though. We giggle too much. I get complaints from one guy and everyone else telling him to pipe down. This is why we're here.
Yeah, I love to listen to the one-time complainers. I mentioned the other day that after over 600 videos last year, one person said that they thought I should tone down my shirts.
Oh, no, no, no. I was saying that we're too obnoxious, and Jeff said the most obnoxious part is the shirts and my favorite. So you're doing something right.
Something's happening. All right. Well, we're going to talk today. We're going to talk a lot from now on about bots. I don't know about you. My channel is going to be, it might change to a bot channel because it's going to change the world and I'm going to be riding this forever. It is just amazing to me. I'm so excited about it. So what I'd like to do today, Brian, with your permission, I want to talk about the timeline. There's a lot of discussion out there. Some people think that they're already making bots right now in the factory. Some people think their bots are already working in the factory. Some people think that it'll be 2029 before there's any useful. I mean, I have people in my comments saying it'll be 2029, 2030 before there's any useful bots at all. But over the last week, 10 days, we've seen a lot of evidence that bots are going to be pretty ready to go. What have you thought about all these videos that we've seen from China and from what's his name, Adcock and all these guys? I mean, holy mackerel, these videos.
Well, last week you brought up an important point, which was the convergence of all these technologies needed to make this happen. And we are at that inflection point where if we'd have tried to do this even 10 years ago, cheap compute that's energy efficient wouldn't have been quite there. It would have been close, but it wouldn't have been there. The AI speed and tech, you can hard code things, but AI is what you need. And even a rudimentary AI by today's standards can do a lot of training. So 2029, that feels very pessimistic. I am a lot more conservative on these estimates than you are, but to me 2029, I hear that and say, oh, so you just don't have vision. That might as well be forever. That might as well be infinity. The question I saw yesterday, someone asked on X, was when will we reach minimum viable product?
Right.
And the answer is, well, for what? There are infinite applications. And if the application is, does it walk? Can it do a task? We're already there.
Yeah.
If they were to release a developer version, a dev kit for it, where you could buy one for 50, 100,000 and get access to do your own training on it for your application, it's ready to go today. The question is that something they want to do? And the answer to me appears to be no. They want to keep as much of that in-house as possible. And I can see the benefit to them doing so. So is it ready to do every task? No. Does it need to do every task? No. If sometimes I hear people saying, on this one technology, this one company needs to slow down. We're at a point where it doesn't matter what one company does anymore. If Tesla were to say tomorrow, we abandon bot, it's still going to happen. Just not with my shares.
Yes.
Not with my money on the line. So this is, and if you compare it to a lot of other projects a large company might do, this is a very cheap gamble. This is not a bet the farm kind of deal. You've noticed that the R&D spend hasn't blown out of proportion because of this program.
Right.
While for a company that only develops a handful of cars, but they also develop batteries and dojo and other things, but it's still quite affordable. So I think, if you want to ask about specific parts of the timeline, we could get some mileage out of that. But I want to say that you're a crazy person and you may be right.
All right, good. All right, so let's, just for fun, I want to kind of break it down because I think that it's one thing to say, oh, by June, Tesla will be making bots and putting them in the factory, making, on a production line, putting them in the factory, putting them to work. And then somebody says, no, that's impossible. It'll be a year from anyway. But if you take it and you break it down, all of a sudden you start to say, okay, maybe we're further along than we thought, or maybe not. So let's take a look. Number one would be the final version, the what do you call it? The manufacturer's version. Give it a name. What's the name? What do they call it?
Let's just call it a 1.0. Let's just call it 1.0.
1.0.
The one that's out after beta,
right?
The actual production candidate, release candidate.
Yeah, those kind of names. Yeah, those are good. So Scott Walter thinks that the one that we saw on the video a week and a half ago was it. He says they put the name on the chest. It's probably the production candidate. If it's not, or if it is, your opinion, and if it isn't, when do you think they'll have that candidate ready to go?
So it all depends on what's going on inside. If the training is ready, if it's done, then any bot from today forward can be the release candidate. It is sufficient. The dexterity is adequate. The mobility is adequate. I saw one guy say, well, if all I need is for it to walk 5% more human, and then I would be interested. And I said, why do you care?
Yeah, right.
Why do you care? The robots working in your home today have wheels.
Yeah.
Does that upset you? It shouldn't. And I saw another guy say, if we see that the next factory is designed around the Optimus, then we know it's ready to go. And I say, all factories ever are designed around the Optimus. If it's a factory that a human can operate in, it's already an Optimus factory. So I'd say there is no longer a reason to wait on the physical design. The physical design will continue improving, but it is not the holdup.
Okay, so then that would take us to number two. When will we have all the components? This is Tesla now. I don't care about the other companies. When will Tesla have all the components for the robot that we saw sourced and or tooled, depending on whether they're buying them or making them?
So that's an impossible one. We just don't know. We don't even know where it would be built. But I believe the factory would be small enough and light industrial enough. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
That it could be built anywhere. The cast components would require a very small machine compared to the things that are stamping, out car parts.
Yes.
So they could have a warehouse somewhere that's already tooling up for it. And we just wouldn't know, because you don't need a bespoke factory to make the first million of these. You could hermit crab into somewhere existing effectively.
Mhm.
So when will that happen? That I was going to say I can't guess, but I know that that's not why I'm here. So I know I will save you the time of pressing me for an answer and just say year or two. I'd say year would be the minimum. So it could be as soon as a year, but we're going to hit an inflection point. And when I say Tesla is going to hit an inflection point where they say there's no reason to wait anymore. And I believe they could tool this up in 6 months for a version 1 line, which would be the 10,000 a year, 100,000 a year, not the million, 5 million a year. For that, they would build their own factory to start shaving nickels, but they don't need to on the first 10 to 100,000.
Okay, and so as I've looked at it, I look at the components that I know something about building, and it seems like I would agree with you from day one, 6 months. But I would believe that some of the things like the actuators, the motors, some of the other things have already been tooled. I mean, I don't know why they would wait. Some of these actuators, I don't think they would think there was much iteration that they needed to do before they actually had a production version.
You're talking about some components.
Yes.
And the question I was answering was about all components. So some of it is ready to go. I would argue that the shin is final, that there is no more room for advancement in a meaningful way on that particular element. But until you've got the real hangup is going to be the brain. And they have not let us peek behind that curtain just yet.
Okay, all right. So when will all the components be ordered for initial production?
Ordered. Uh, 3 months after they start building the factory. Yeah, after they start tooling. In terms of the beauty of the bot is, unlike the car, the robotaxi has to do anything every time perfectly. And for the bot, it doesn't. There are a whole lot of tasks it can do pretty okay and still be a viable product. So there's the pursuit of perfection is not as critical to getting the first product out. And it's going to really make things possible for them to learn along the way. If they've got with autonomy in vehicles, we've seen local maximums. We've got this approach, it gets us to here, but it can't get us further. With bots, if here is a viable product, you're there. You can go on to your V12, your bot version of V12, whatever that may be, while you're already selling useful, valuable products. So it's going to save them in that regard. So in terms of when will they start ordering products, not on the calendar today, but it could change. They could start orders on the very, very optimistic side in 3 to 6 months. But I still think we've got, again, a year or two until these start being deployed in any meaningful sense.
Okay, so then the next question is maybe the most critical. Production line design final. They've been hiring these people to create, design, and engineer the production line. So when do you think that production line will be ready to start moving robots along it?
When will the line itself? So the design of the line is, I'm sure, already written. It's maybe not the 1.0, it might be the 0.1 or the 0.2, but it could be as high as 0.5. They know what all the pieces are. They know what how each one is going to be made. So I assume that the design for the line itself is at a 0.8, 0.9 already. And that the question is how configurable it is to work around existing columns inside of a structure. And I imagine it's sufficiently modular that, like, your factory had columns in it that you had to work around. Those were not deal breakers. And yeah, they were able to, I'm confident that the design for the factory itself is sufficiently close to done that if they needed to go to production, start producing within 3 to 6 months, it'd be close enough they could get it done in plenty of time.
All right, so then that kind of begs the next question. My next one was production line tooling and equipment ordered. And then the next one after production line assembled and ready for certification. So you're saying that all of that from kind of almost final design to ready to certify would be about a 6 month slot. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, we don't know how long it takes to get that equipment. We don't know what the back order time is, but we know that they have so much equipment that they already own that they could probably go steal pieces from the automotive line from equipment they're not using and use it instead.
Yes.
Certainly in the early days, but probably just at all. It's the same, in many cases, the exact same equipment.
Yeah.
So it may be overpowered. You may not need a robot capable of lifting 3,000 pounds, but you'll have one. And it can also lift 50 pounds.
Right. So, and sometimes they hobble their own stuff together. Cobble, what's the word? Anyway, sometimes they design it and create it themselves in their own, because they have lots of tooling capability at Tesla. Yeah. All right. So then, but you're still saying first parts. Well, okay, first parts. Let's talk about it because I don't want to put words in your mouth. When do you think first parts? Do you think they'll make maybe I'm going to back up. Do you think they'll make a lot of bots between now and when that line is ready to go by hand or partially on a line, partially by hand? Do you think there'll be hundreds or thousands made between now and when that production line is ready to go?
I do not. I think it'll be dozens. and that they will say, you know, when I was a kid, we painted the house. And my mom was a firm believer that everyone must work as hard as they can all the time, even if it makes no sense at all. So my sister and I were assigned to this little corner of the house and given little brushes, and we spent an entire day covering a wall, one little section. And on day 2 or 3, my stepdad came around the corner with the air sprayer and saw what a terrible job we did, and he just recovered the whole thing in an hour and just kept moving. And my sister and I were devastated that our mom had taken so much of our life to do nothing meaningful at all. And that's what the pre-production robots would be. Why are we hand assembling something that is going to be falling off the end of the line so fast it can barely get its feet under it when when that's just right around the corner? So I don't see a huge benefit to massive hand production in advance of the line going live.
Okay, so if the line is designed and the first production model is ready to go, except as you say, possibly for the chip, for the brain, for the mind, although he said it would be the same FSD chip. But it would have to be, trained, ready to go. So if they can have all of that done in 6 months and ready to start producing bots in 6 months, why would they wait?
I don't know. Why would they wait? Is this a riddle?
No, I can't think of I'm thinking if I'm Elon, and of course, I've owned a manufacturing plant. If I've got a product and it's ready to go, and I think that it could be sold or rented, create some revenue and or create some savings, I'm going to
So
be
the reason you would wait
I'm
is
gonna
because
put that thing together
yeah,
so fast. Yeah.
the reason you would wait is because if you release it prematurely, it could create a headache for the humans. If the humans are now bogged down with trying to service and field complaints uh, from one little aspect that wasn't quite ready, it's going to be a nightmare. And the last thing you want is to get too many in the field that you might need to recall or replace, uh, or that will take you down a path that is a dead end. And now you're stuck servicing something that doesn't have the long term viability. So I
Would-
think getting it right the first time in that regard, yeah, is why it's important.
Well, wouldn't that be a good reason then to go ahead and get the paintbrushes out and build 100 or 200 of them and actually put them into as many different complex working situations, whether it's Tesla's factories, SpaceX factory, whether it's first tier suppliers, and to put a bunch of these in actual working situations where that kind of thing can be done now, where we're socializing the bots, we're making sure that they work well in a situation. We make sure that they're not going to make mistakes that could interrupt manufacturing, et cetera. It would seem like you could chew gum and walk at the same time.
Those are still beta. Those are still not production units. And that's what testing is all about. And I imagine they will do that. To respond to one of the things you said very, very early on is there are people who believe it's already at work in the factory today. And I think that that is not the case because humans are very bad with secrets and we haven't heard anything about it.
Yes, well, that's always been the argument, and I agree with that argument. But the question would become at this point, I mean, really at this point, with what we've seen in the last few days, and I know the competition's not really going to matter long term, but in the short term, what we're seeing would suggest that Tesla probably is doing just as good as Figure, just as good as Atom. I have to believe that that bot is further along in all aspects than those bots are. And yet Brett Adcock says he's going to be in factories in 2024, third-party factories, and he's got people in those factories right now with helmet cameras
Training.
training, are getting the training videos that will be able to train the bots. Like he just trained it in 10 hours to do the coffee machine. It would seem to me, if that's happening right now over at Figure, that Tesla should be doing the same thing or even further along to the point where they're now replacing that human with a bot so that they can actually find out how it does in the factory setting.
All valuable points. I would argue that Tesla doesn't have the same urgency that some of those companies do. They need to get a product on the market, or many of them will die. Tesla has the luxury of not needing to pursue the next round of funding. Here at CES, the Consumer Electronics Show in sunny, freezing cold Las Vegas, Nevada, there are a whole lot of dreamers. Companies saying, I have this product, it's amazing, it's cheap, it solves all your problems. And hopefully we'll be able to release it before we go broke. Do you know anybody? Do you know anybody? Because we are hurting. And that's an urgency they have. That there's this really neat company that makes these these little micro solar panels that have the battery integrated into the solar cell. And they are for Internet of Things items. It is for a carbon monoxide detector that never needs a battery. It'll get enough juice from ambient light during the day, charge itself in the back of the cell, and be able to keep itself running overnight. It's great. And I said, great. Are these products on the market? No, we are looking for businesses to help us, to save us. And I wish you the best. But if it was Panasonic making this, they wouldn't have that urgency. They would work on perfecting it and then deploying it at the time that makes sense, rather than at the absolute minimum viable product. And the risk with hitting minimum viable product is sometimes you miss the mark, and what you've just sold a bunch of is a not viable product.
Okay. All right. So you're still of the opinion, you then believe that they will not be producing bots in 2024 from a line manufacturing in any kind of scale, 100 a week, 1,000 a week, whatever. You don't think that'll happen at all in 2024?
That is correct.
Okay.
Final answer.
Final answer. Well, I'm not going to go to the second set of questions then, because they have to do with more of the where are we now kind of questions. And maybe we'll do that in another video, or maybe I'll hold it till next week or whatever. But that's good. I think that was an interesting process to go through. Of course, I'm in a completely different world than you. I think they'll be making thousands of these things by May. That's my number. That's my month. Okay. So
I hope you're right.
Yeah.
Right. I would be very delighted to be wrong.
There you go. There's times when you want to be wrong, and sometimes when you don't. Well, Brian, it's been great having you on. I hope your day at CES is just filled with all kinds of people hitting you up for money.
I hope something similar to that. I'm already having a great time, and meeting some fascinating people and some old friends as well, and starting to feel like I've been to a couple of these, and that my time is being spent well. So I look forward to getting you some fabulous inside scoops next week when we have a chat.
All right. Perfect. Thanks, Brian. And to all of you out there, it has been great talking to you. I can't find the